Yes, gender is a construct, but it is a complicated construct for Black women. Hey, Angela Parker, aka Boozy Bible Scholar, but I'm responding to this comment with a scripture through womanist eyes format. So I'm using my Huda Beauty Icy Nude palette, and I want to talk about this comment, gender is a construct, and the concept of made for men, which is coming from my previous video on wearing my hood and my academic gown and my academic regalia, and talking about the hood being made for men because it's made for being put on with a tie is absurd, according to this friend on TikTok. Now, I understand that gender is a construct and being made for men is absurd, but it was actually made for men because they did not think about women actually obtaining doctoral degrees when the hood was made. So, when I talk about gender and Black women, let me start. I'm starting with my Wayne Goss, and I'm going into unapologetic. So that seems like an appropriate color. Unapologetic. And I'm going to attack this by first stating that Black women's construct, identity constructs, and trans rights and trans identity constructs are very similar. Why do I say that? Think about the radical right, the right and the conversations that they have about Michelle Obama. One thing that the radical right does is constantly talk about Michelle Obama as Michael Obama, or talk about her as being a man, or you never see pictures of her pregnant because they constantly try to talk about Michelle Obama as a man. Well, why do they do that? You actually have to go back to enslaved times. I'm taking a Wayne Goss number 6, and I'm going to go into she's rich, and that feels appropriate. She's rich. So why am I talking about Michelle Obama? Because in enslaved times, when you had field enslaved women, they would often be characterized as he. Field enslaved women would be talked about as he. Overseers and Black enslaved men would talk about Black women in the field as he. They constructed them as men because they were doing work similar to men. So Black women during colonial slavery were often seen as men because they had to do the same work as men. So think about Sojourner Truth. When she talks about her "Ain't I a Woman" speech, she says, I had to do the work of men but could never get the same amount of food. And yet I had to bear children and watch them all sold away and had the grief of a mother. So Black women in enslaved times had the complicated relationships of being women but being viewed as men and not being afforded the opportunity to actually be women. So why is this important? Because when I go out into the world, I actually want to construct my identity as woman. And I just went into VVS. VVS right here, very, very sexy. And so when we talk about trans rights and Black women's rights, if you look at the work of Judith Butler talks about how all of us, when we go out into the world, we are performing our gender, which is how gender is a social construct. And so when I go out into the world, I perform my gender just like anyone else. Trans folks perform their gender. Black women perform their gender. Anybody performs their gender. And now I'm going to go into bling, just because. Bling right here. So I'm going out and I'm performing my gender just like anyone else. So yes, gender is a construct, but I want to perform my gender as a fully functioning African American woman who has a PhD and not have to conform with a robe that is keeping me constrained around my neck. I want to perform and enjoy my life as a African American woman without having to be reminded that something was not made for me. So yeah, I could be entrepreneurial and create a line that is exclusive. I could do that, but I just want to still remind folks that the things that were made were not made for me. So here's the final look, friends. This is my thoughts on gender construct and the problem that Black women have had with misgendering the same way that trans folks often have with misgendering. And there's a long history of misgendering that Black women suffer, as I've opened up with Michelle Obama, and now and still thinking about gender as a social construct. And I also have to mention that yesterday we had another mass shooting here in the United States of America that can easily be politicized. And we just need good gun control, folks, but that's a whole other story. Angela Parker, Boozy Bible Scholar. As always, friends, be bold, be brave, be brilliant, and look to have more conversations around these hard subjects. I will talk to you soon.